Good morning. Welcome back to Planet Doug Behind the Scenes for Thursday, February 29th, 2024. And of course, that is a leap day. So happy leap day. I love leap days because the way my brain works, I love to think about how so many things are artificial. What I mean is how things are in reality. And in normal life, we just assume the day is 24 hours long, the year is 365 days long, and everything works out perfectly mathematically. But of course, that's not true at all. There's time, and then there are 1,000 different ways of us dividing up that time and trying to make sense of it. And people throughout history have used so many different systems based on lunar calendars, solar calendars, on and on. And of course, there is no perfect way to talk about time that makes sense on a human level. And the system we have now, the only reason it works is that we adjust. It's just like adjusting our watch. Our system for recording time is not perfect. It goes out of sync. And then every few years, in order to bring it back into sync with actual reality, we have to add one day. And then, boop, we adjust for the fault in our system. I love that. And of course, if you happen to have been born on February 29th, I mean, how old are you today? You don't get nearly as many birthdays. And just a couple of days ago, or maybe it was even yesterday, I came across a whole series of YouTube shorts talking about the birthdays of our sun. So, for example, every time the Earth goes around the sun, that's 1 year. So the Earth is 1 year older. But of course, the sun is also orbiting around our galaxy. And every time it makes one circuit around the galaxy, that would be technically a galactic year. I'm not sure what the real term for it is, but it takes this number. I love this number. I want to get it put on a t-shirt. It takes the Earth, well, it takes the sun, it takes our solar system 230 million years to go around the galaxy one time. 230 million years to go around once. Gives you just the vaguest idea of the massive size of the Milky Way galaxy. And then, of course, you go on to think of the fact that the Milky Way is practically, it's a baby galaxy compared to the big monster galaxies that are out there. 230 million years to go around our galaxy one time. So technically, if you do the math, based on the estimated age of the universe and the age of our galaxy, the Earth, no, not Earth, I keep saying Earth, the sun, our solar system, is 20 years old. It's only gone around the galaxy 20 times since the beginning of time. I find that very fascinating. I love to wake up with my brain percolating and thinking about things like that. 230 million years to go around the galaxy one time. That's a big, big galaxy. And when you watch these videos that talk about the sun moving, you always get the most amazing graphic, because I grew up in a time when our solar system was always shown static, right? We've seen this same image thousands of times in our lifetime, with the sun here and then a whole bunch of planets going around it in a circle, like a bunch of marbles going around a golf ball in a platter shape. And it looks like the sun is just sitting there, and then the planets are going around it. But modern times are thinking about most things, most scientific ideas have gotten much more advanced. And of course, with computers and computer graphics, we can show things in a way that is much closer to reality. And when you see a graphic of the sun orbiting the galaxy, then you think of the sun as moving, and then the whole physical image changes, because you see the sun moving, but then you see all of the planets chasing the sun, sort of moving around it in this strange dance, almost like it's behind the sun, trying to catch up. It's like if I remember right, the planets are not moving in a perfectly circular orbit. Of course, it's an oval to begin with. It's an ellipse. It's an ellipse, I guess. And then not only that, it's doing an ellipse in a corkscrew pattern as it's moving through space. So you actually see it forming a corkscrew. And I find that image fascinating too, because it challenges the way we normally think about those things. So happy birthday to the sun, 20 years old, and happy birthday to leap year people out there. You could also be technically in your 80th year. You could be 80 years old, but according to the calendar, technically I guess you would be 20 years old. You would still be as young as our sun is. And as often happens, I woke up this morning thinking about being a foreigner overseas, because there are always things I have to deal with, and I wake up in the morning and I think, hey, I'm a foreigner overseas. I have to deal with things. It's just something you just end up thinking about all the time. And of course, one of those things is you always have to find a place to live. So you're always booking hotel rooms. You're thinking ahead where you're going to go next. What's the next hotel room you're going to book? So I'm dealing with that on a constant basis. And lately it has become such an annoyance, which got me thinking about being a foreigner overseas. I talked about this at length the other day, that the owner of this hotel contacted me. My phone rang and she spoke to me and said, I'm no longer allowed to use Agoda. I won't go into this story at length, but because Agoda doesn't charge enough, the prices on Agoda are too low, so the hotel won't accept Agoda reservations anymore, and I was instructed to find more expensive platforms. Otherwise, they won't let me stay here. So I went off searching, and that has just made my life so much more complicated. It's just so annoying, because Agoda just worked for me. I got all the bugs kinked out, and it offered the lowest prices. To be honest, I'm staying in this hotel pretty much only because the price was attractive on Agoda, and I could keep booking the room at this attractive price. You take that away, honestly, I have no real reason to be here. Now that I'm no longer paying that price, all I see are the negative aspects of being here. One of them being that I'm not even in Port Dickson. I'm 3.5 kilometers outside of Port Dickson. So if I have to pay more, I might as well stay at a hotel in a more interesting location, get closer to the water, because the whole thing in Port Dickson is being near the water, and I am near the water, but it's not an attractive piece of water. Anyway, so I've been looking at other hotels thinking, should I move into a different part of Port Dickson, assuming I need to stay here longer? And then I end up in all kinds of trouble, because on Traveloka, I don't know how the system works. Hotels are much more expensive on Traveloka. And then you have to deal with all of the taxes. And I find this very, very frustrating. And it's leading me more and more to thinking that Malaysia is a less attractive place for visitor than surrounding countries. And in fact, there was a story about that, which I find quite interesting, that the Malaysian Minister for Tourism was recently demoted. I don't think he was fired outright, but he was removed from his position as minister and given another job. And now maybe they've already found one, but they were looking for a new Minister of Tourism. And I guess the story is he failed at his job. His higher ups decided, for whatever reason, whatever metrics they were referring to, that he wasn't doing his job properly as Minister for Tourism, that the rates for tourism in Malaysia were not at the levels they want, and they're being outstripped by neighboring countries. And I was thinking, yes, like maybe I had something to do with that. My constant discussion of the Malaysian tourism tax perhaps got into the right ears, and they decided to get rid of the minister. But more to the point, it would be better if they got rid of the tourism tax, because on Traveloka and on Booking.com or any other site you want to mention, I don't know whether they charge the tourism tax or not. It's impossible to tell. And you end up going down this deep rabbit hole every time you're trying to book a room. You don't know how much the room costs. You have no idea. I was looking at some rooms yesterday on Traveloka, and you see a price. Oh, that's a pretty good price right there. But by the time you get to the actual payment page, the price has doubled, and you're starting to figure out what is going on. One thing, well, did they include the Malaysian 10 ringgit per night tourism tax? You can't tell. It's impossible to figure that out. Anyway, every time you click on a new screen in Traveloka or even on Agoda, the price of your hotel room just goes up and up and up and up. And you never know when the darn thing is going to stop. They keep hinting that, well, this includes all the relevant fees. And then you click on the next one, but then the price went up by 30%. And well, they say, well, we had this other fee. It's not really a relevant fee, but it's an extra processing fee. They use language to trick you into thinking this is the price. And then every time the price goes up because they keep adding things. I was looking at a page, I think this is from Agoda actually, because Agoda does specify things more clearly than the other sites. And that's another reason I like Agoda. But it's also very depressing. It's giving me a price here, which is not the final price, so Agoda is annoying as well. But I've got a room booking. I've booked the room, I'm going through the steps, tells me how much the room costs, and underneath that number it says, included in the price, service charge 5%, tax 6%, tax 8%, tax 10%, tax 20 ringgit. 5 separate taxes, and they just call them tax, tax, tax. They don't even tell you what kind of tax this is. So you got your price, but on top of the room price, you're paying, well, 20 ringgit because this was for 2 nights. So it would be 10 ringgit per night tax, and then service charge 5%, tax of 6%, tax of 8%, tax of 10%, on and on. And I find that very annoying and very frustrating. And on Traveloka, it doesn't specify whether the tourism tax is included in what you're paying Traveloka or not. So do you have to have money set aside in cash to pay them at the front counter? And then when you talk to the people at the front counter, they don't know either. They don't even have how much I paid on their computer system, apparently, because every time I talk to them about the fact that I paid for the room and the tourism tax, they keep asking me, oh, so how many nights did you book, and what kind of a room did you book, and how much did you pay? And I have to get out all of my documents from my phone to show them, which I find very annoying. It never happened with Agoda, but it happens with Traveloka. And now they don't know, do I need to pay them the tax or not? And I've gone through this long song and dance. The first person I talked to we had to talk about the tourism tax endlessly. They had to look at my documents. They had to go online. They had to look things up. They finally concluded that no, the tax was not included on Traveloka, so I have to pay them extra in cash. And then they had to fill out an official receipt for me. So she turned to me and said, oh, can I have your passport, please? And I was annoyed at that because my passport was back in my room, and I'd been standing at the desk for so long as we're having this long discussion. It's not how I want to begin my day, talking again endlessly about the Malaysian tourism tax, how it works and how to pay it and how to get a receipt. And now they need my passport every time so that they can fill out the tourism tax. I went back there a second time. It was a different clerk, and she had a completely different idea about how everything worked. We had to have another long discussion about the tourism tax. And then I went back there again 2 days ago, or yesterday, whenever it was, and there was a third hotel clerk there. And this was the guy. The guy here, he doesn't really do anything. He's a typical guy in a customer service role. And he took my money. I paid for 2 nights, and I went up to him and I said, I booked 2 more nights. I need to pay you 20 ringgit in tourism tax. Here's 20 ringgit. And I was, as far as I'm concerned, I'm done. I don't want to spend any more time on this topic. And he, being a guy, was very happy to go along with that. And he just opened the cash drawer, threw the 20 ringgit in, closed the drawer, and went back to his YouTube video or whatever it was he was doing on his phone. And we were done, and I walked away. And then much later in the afternoon, I'm sitting here in my room working on a video, and I've got some video playing on my laptop, and I hear a noise. I thought I heard a noise, kind of coming from the door. So I stop playback on my video and lean forward. I'm waiting. I don't hear anything. So start editing again. Did I just hear something? I stopped editing. I'm waiting and waiting, listening, looking underneath the door, looking for movement. Nothing. I go back to editing, and then finally it happens a third time. I think I heard something, so I thought, all right. So I have to move my laptop off my lap, which is a complicated procedure because I might have 2 hard drives, a flash drive, so many things plugged into the ports and all my various adapters and cables, and you have to lift them all very carefully and keep them lined up, because if you jiggle them at all, the cables will disconnect and you lose whatever you were doing, and you got to reattach everything. So I'm carefully moving the thing to the side, lowering it, trying to keep everything even, sliding my hands out from underneath. Okay, it worked. Even the power cord, if you jiggle the power cord, you risk the whole laptop just shutting down. It's a whole deal. So then I go to the door. I'm not in a great mood at being interrupted like this, and I open the door, and yeah, the hotel clerk is standing there, and I guess he was knocking, but he must have been knocking in an alternate dimension, just sort of brushing his knuckles against the door. So careful about not disturbing me. I think that's why they knock so quietly. They don't want to disturb anyone. But by knocking so quietly, they disturb me so much more because I can't hear the knock. Anyway, I open the door, and he's standing there, and now he's got the tourism tax receipt. And he said, I was supposed to give you a receipt. So I filled it out, and here it is. So I think his boss came in and talked to him about how are things going today, and has the foreigner paid his tourism tax yet? And he said yes, and she said, did you give him the receipt? And he probably said, what receipt? And now he had to fill out the receipt. Come get me. So we're hours later in the day. I thought I avoided the tourism tax conversation, but we still had to have it. So yeah, I'm not happy. I am not happy with hotels and tourism taxes and all the other taxes and Agoda and Traveloka and online booking. It's just making life in Malaysia too complicated for me. It's too much. It's too much. So I'm glad you demoted your Malaysian minister for tourism, and you can get rid of the tourism tax next. That would make me even happier. Not to be too hard on Malaysia, it does seem to be a worldwide trend. Perhaps because I do searches for these topics, maybe it feels like it, but quite often if I open up Google News, whatever it is I'm doing on the internet, even on YouTube, any social media site, I do see lots of stories about countries putting in place visa restrictions and tourism taxes. There's a lot of stories coming out of Bali because they just put into place a Bali-specific tourism tax of 150,000 ringgit per person. So you come into Bali, you've got to pay 150,000 rupiah, not ringgit, 150,000 rupiah, the local currency. And they put it in place on February 14th. So it's brand new. So of course, they're going through the initial confusion of the early days because they miscalculated how many people were going to be doing this. I don't know how they miscalculated because they know how many tourists come into Bali every day through the airport. It is thousands and thousands and thousands every single day. So they have to be prepared for that. And all these people paid for their tourism tax online, which is what they were told to do. They went to a website, paid 150,000, and they got a QR code, and they have to go through the airport, and then they have to get their QR code scanned at some point to prove that they paid the tourism tax. But they didn't have enough scanners. I think the article I read said they had 6 scanners in the entire airport, and that wasn't enough, and they ended up with long lineups of people waiting to get their thing scanned. And of course it took a long time because the average person will get to the front of the line, and when they get to the front of the line, that's when it occurs to them to find their QR code. they're standing in front of the scanner, and now it's like, oh yeah, right, where was that? Oh, I have to download it from my email account. And so of course every person takes forever to do it, and they finally scan it, and they had long waiting periods for people. So now I think they started telling people, some people, okay, you can pay it online, but not everybody. Other people pay it in the airport in cash. Maybe they have counters where you can do it. Other people pay it this way, because they weren't ready to handle the flow of people yet. So they got to get all of that figured out. The one country that appears to be bucking the trend might be Vietnam, because every article I read about Vietnam and tourism seems to be providing good news. The latest articles I read, I didn't do a deep dive into the subject, so I don't really know what they were talking about, but there was something about Vietnam offering visa waivers to many more countries, so that you don't even need a visa at all. And they're always talking about visas for 6 months, 3 months, even 1 year, and making it easier for all kinds of people from all kinds of countries to get those visas. They just seem to be talking about things that make going to Vietnam easier, yet everything I read about every other country in the world talks about things that is making going to those countries harder, shorter, and more expensive. So very depressing. And a related story that I've been thinking about a lot, you see articles about this all over the place, is that in Canada, they are making life is so difficult for immigrants, in particular for international students, that people who have immigrated to Canada, international students who are in Canada, a lot of them, significant numbers of them, are just saying, we're done with Canada and we're going home. You see, if you go on YouTube, you'll find all kinds of YouTube videos from international YouTubers, immigrants to Canada, and they have a YouTube channel. They're documenting their experience as an immigrant, and a lot of them are saying, I'm going back home. And they list all the reasons for it. You know, the 7 reasons why living in Canada is not good for me anymore. And there are tons of them, but the major one that everything is based on, I think, is that the cost of living in Canada is increasing rapidly. Inflation, prices are going up, and nobody can afford to live in Canada anymore. There's a housing crisis. Housing is unbelievably expensive, and most immigrants, of course, and international students, their main goal for even moving from their home country to Canada is the allure of making more money. That has been the historic driver of immigration forever, and now they're discovering that in Canada, living is so expensive and it's so difficult that it could be better back in their home country, and a lot of them are leaving and going back home, which I find a little bit amusing, because all the other stories from countries like the United States are the exact reverse. All the stories about tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of immigrants, legal immigrants, illegal immigrants, all pouring across the border into the United States and into countries in Europe. And the people in those countries don't want them and are basically trying to keep them out. So for the United States, immigrants are trying to get in and Americans are trying to keep them out. In Canada, it's the opposite. Canadians want them to stay, and the immigrants are just trying to get the heck out and go back home. Quite, I don't know if that's embarrassing for Canada. I don't feel particularly embarrassed about it, because I've had that feeling about Canada for my whole lifetime, to be honest, that it is extremely expensive, and in recent decades, much more so. Housing in particular, housing is out of reach of average people. And I've always thought that Canada was not a friendly environment for people from other countries. What I mean is that when I'm traveling in Southeast Asia, in the past when I've been going to Africa or South America, the appeal of those countries, a large part of the appeal for me is the exciting atmosphere you find everywhere out on the street. Every day, every time you go outside, there's people everywhere, there's shops everywhere, there's food everywhere, there's life happening all around you. But when I return to Canada, on those rare occasions that I've gone back, Canada has always felt like a cold, empty, quiet land where nothing is going on. Streets are empty. Yeah, it's a very different lifestyle. It can be a very good lifestyle living there. You just have to adapt to that new lifestyle. But it always struck me that it would be a major shock for someone flying from anywhere. Again, just pick a country. I'll pick Africa as a good example. Just fly into Toronto from Kampala, and you're an immigrant and you're going to be living in Toronto now. Well, how would you react to a city like Toronto when you go out for the first time? It's like, where are all the people? Where's the food? Where are the markets? Where's the music playing? Where are my friends? It's more difficult to be social in Canada. You have to plan ahead. You can't drop in on people. You don't run into people randomly everywhere you go. You have to make arrangements in advance. You have to schedule your friends in. That's just how life is in Canada. And if you're not prepared for that, it can be quite a shock. And I always imagine immigrants suffering a major shock when they realize this and not being happy about it. But historically, immigrants have stayed in Canada mainly because the economic benefits were there. But it seems like the economic benefits are disappearing, and there are other barriers now, other problems and complications. Put all that together, and immigrants are now leaving Canada. So yeah, interesting stories there. The world of Planet Doug has involved a lot of video editing, no big surprise there, but it has been a different type of editing, and I've had a lot of fun with that. Basically what I did was add an introduction to the videos. And I don't know whether I'm going to be able to keep doing this in the future because it just takes an incredibly long time to do it, and I don't know if it adds a great deal of value to the video or not. But it was fun to do. And the story of doing it is, as always, a long and complicated one. It started when I made YouTube shorts. I just had this impulse to do it where I was done editing the full Planet Doug video, and then I exported it, and I'm busy uploading the video. But then at that time, I still have the editing program open, and I still have all the raw files in memory, so the whole video is right there. And that's a very convenient time to do a lot of things. So before you delete the project and delete all the video files, you have to think about that. Okay, what can I do with this before I delete it all? So one thing you can do, of course, is make all of the video chapters. Doing the video chapters with the time codes is a lot easier when you have everything on your timeline, because you can see the exact time, and then you can race through the whole video hitting the arrow key. But oh, here's a new section. What's the time? You write it down. Boop, 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 boop. Here's the next section. And you can figure out very quickly with visual cues based on audio, based on cuts in the video, where each section of the video begins, and then you can see the time code. And if you don't create your time codes and your chapters, then it's 10 times more difficult to do it later on, particularly for a long video. So that's when I make all the chapter codes. And then I decided to make some YouTube shorts. It occurred to me that while I have the whole video sitting right there, why don't I make some shorts? So I would quickly scan through the video, and anytime a highlight occurred or something interesting visually occurred, I would make a 30-second or 60-second YouTube short. So I would just go through the whole video and cut this out, cut this out, cut this out, export a short, and I would export 10 or 15 shorts from each video. So I was having fun doing that, and now suddenly I had 15 exports, and each export was a highlighted clip from the video. And it occurred to me, oh, maybe I can take a couple of those, throw them at the beginning of the video as highlights. It's like, that would be kind of cool. So that's kind of where the idea started. And then I was watching a Paddy Doyle video. It was the one where he hiked up Mount Kinabalu, and I was watching his whole Borneo series, and he's developed a structure for his videos that have quite a sophisticated introduction. Basically, it's a coming up, like coming up in this video, and then he shows all the highlights of whatever his next level adventure was, and then he has the trailer for the Borneo series, and then the video starts. So I was looking at that introduction that he put together, the coming up section, and I had this idea that I should try to mimic that. The first time I did it was with the video about my ferry trip from Sumatra to Malaysia. And I think I talked about that already in the last BTS video, where I spent an entire day working on this, and I was trying to make an introduction to the video similar to Paddy Doyle's introduction, and I failed miserably. I worked for the entire day, and at the end I just ended up with a mess. I hated what I had, and it didn't seem to be going anywhere, and it was really frustrating, and I didn't have anything at the end of the day. I went to sleep, and I woke up the next morning, and I thought, do I even want to try? But I thought I should at least look at what I did. I still, of course, had the project in my editing program, so I just opened it up and I thought, let's just watch it and see if there's anything there I can work with. So I watched what I came up with, and it was just as horrible as I remembered, but I had a bit more energy, and I thought, I think I can see what's wrong with it. Let's try again. So I spent another entire day working on the new coming up in this video introduction, and I finished something, and I put it at the front of the video, and you can see it now. So that was an interesting experience. On the face of it, I don't know that it was worthwhile for me to do it. The time investment was substantial. In the end, I think I spent more time editing that 2-minute introduction than other people would spend on their entire video. It took me that long to do it. Could be because I don't know what I'm doing, and I'm very slow, I'm not sure. Or I was too ambitious with it right out of the gate, and I had to develop all these new techniques. But I just figured I might as well try it one more time. I did like the overall effect, because when I did the introduction, focusing on the highlights, it also gave me the idea to try to make the video shorter to focus on those highlights, and I ended up just removing large sections of the video. Typical Planet Doug sections where I'm talking about logistics. I just went through immigration, and then I stop on the dock with my GoPro and I talk for 15 minutes about visas and visa on arrival and extensions and immigration, and I tell that whole story, and I just decided to remove all of that. Anytime I saw myself just talking into the camera, I took all that out, and I tried to focus on the highlights, anything that was visual. And there were visual sections such as me with my 360 camera on the boat, and during those 360 video sessions, I was still talking. If you zoom in on the video, you'll see my mouth flapping away. But I removed the audio and I just played music over the top of it to get rid of all the talking. And I went through the whole video that way, trying to make it as short as possible and just to make it more YouTube friendly, more visual, a little bit more interesting, adding more music, those sorts of things. And in the end, I was kind of happy with the result. So I decided to do it again, and the next video project was a day I spent at Cape Rachado. It is a recreational forest on a cape, a peninsula. It has a lighthouse on it, has a bunch of beaches. It's very beautiful. Local people go there for hiking. It's also a big tourist attraction in this area. And I went there for the day and had a very good experience, had a great day, and I had to edit the video of that. And I decided to do a similar thing. I originally put together the Planet Doug video. I followed my usual instincts. I took all of my video, dumped it on the timeline, and just put it all together, and it ended up being an hour and 22 minutes long. An hour and 22 minutes long. And then that was the finished video, exactly the same as all the other Planet Doug videos. And then I decided to reshape it, put an introduction at the front, do my best to shorten it. So I set about doing that, and that took a lot longer than I expected. But I developed a lot more techniques because I was doing it the second time around. The first time I made so many mistakes, but I did learn from those mistakes. And the lessons that I learned, I'll just talk about those now as briefly as I can. The lessons that I learned are, first of all, add the music first. Because what I was doing was starting with the words. What is my introduction script? Coming up in this video, I go to Cape Rachado and I write a script, and then I add all the video clips, line everything up beautifully, and then after it's all done, almost as an afterthought, I'm looking for the music to add, because you want music playing during that intro. And it turned out that was 100% the wrong way to do it, because once you added the music, everything changed. The tone of it changed, the mood of it changed, the timing, everything changed. And I had to redo the entire introduction because of how dramatically the music altered it. And I realized you start with the music. So that was lesson number one. Pick music that's going to match the tone of your video and the tone of the introduction and the highlights. So get the music first. Put the music in place and play the music while you're doing the editing. Because, of course, you've got the beat of the music. So every time you want the video or a photo or a graphic to change from one to the next, you want it happening on the beat. You know, da, 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 da. You know, I just said, you know, I'm not making a big deal out of it, but I'm still in the back of my mind training myself to stop saying, you know. And just as an aside, while I was editing the Cape Rachado video, I noticed how many times I said, you know, during that video. So it's not a problem only in behind the scenes videos. I was saying, you know, in my Cape Rachado video all the time. It's terrible. So I'm trying not to say it anymore, and I am thinking about it, but I'm not going to point it out. I'm not going to count them. I probably won't slap myself every time I do it, but hopefully it doesn't happen very often. What was I saying? I was saying that I add the music first, and I add the graphics based on the beat, and I listen to the music while I'm doing the editing. And another important lesson I learned is you listen to the music while you record the script or whatever it is you want to say, because the music gives you energy. So what I did was complicated, but I had the video playing on my computer, of course. My editing is being done on my laptop, but then I plugged in earphones. So I'm listening to the music, I'm listening to my video through my earphones, and I did that because while I was editing and practicing my introduction, I was also recording in real time, which I thought was a very good lesson as well, because this way I'm listening to the music, but now I'm recording on a microphone at the same time, but the music is not being recorded by the microphone because it's only playing in my ears. So that's the reason I had the music in my ears, so I could record in the microphone while listening to the music. And while you listen to the music, your voice becomes more animated. You become more animated. Because I found that when I recorded my introduction, I sounded fake. I sounded awkward. And no matter how many times I tried to make it conversational and make it natural, I couldn't do it. But as soon as I had music playing, I changed. I had music playing and I started saying, coming up in this video, I just had more energy in my introduction. Coming up, it just worked better. And even while I was practicing the introduction, I was recording all the time. And that turned out to be a very good idea as well, because your energy level is better during the practice. It would be like someone putting on a play and they have a rehearsal, and the rehearsal is amazing because all the actors, all their performers are just relaxed and all the energy is coming out naturally. Then on opening night with an audience, it's horrible because they're feeling more awkward. The spotlight is on them, and that incredible energy they had during the rehearsals isn't there in the live performance anymore. So what I'm doing is, as I'm practicing my intro, I'm recording it, and I ended up with really good takes in my practice runs, and I ended up using a practice run as the final take because my actual final take wasn't as good as my practice run. And one last point that I skipped over is that when you have the music playing, you are more comfortable with pauses. My original attempts to do it, when I had no music playing, I just had the video and the graphics and my script. I jammed it all together with no moments of silence because the silence felt big. It felt annoying. And I ended up taking my video clips and photos and graphics and jamming them together really, really quickly. And then I would speak over the whole thing. So if I'm talking about highlights of the day included going to this beach, climbing this mountain, eating this snack. And then I had mountain beach snack images, boom, 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 really fast. Because if I left a long gap in there, it felt weird because there was just empty air. But now I had music playing, and the music playing allowed you to relax, allowed you to let the video play without feeling like you had to fill every empty space with words. So now when I was talking about coming up in this video, I felt more comfortable leaving pauses, and I would say things like, highlights of the day included going to the beach, having a snack, climbing a tree. And then there'd be 1.5 or 2 seconds of video playing. I say going to the beach, and I show the beach for 2 seconds while the music is playing. And when I tried to make the introduction without the music, I didn't feel it. I didn't have the mood where I could leave those empty gaps and just have silence there because the music would fill in the silence, and everything just worked out better. So anyway, that's what I learned. I learned start with the music, lay that down. The music is your foundation, then add the graphics and the text. If you add music at the end, it doesn't work. Add music first. What else did I learn? I learned that you can record while you're rehearsing. And I just figured out all the physical techniques that I talked about, listening to the music in my ears so that I have the music playing while I'm reading the script and recording it for real. I learned so many things about how to do it, so I did it a lot faster, but I also spent longer on it. It even took longer because I was now refining all of these things. So when I put in the highlights, for example, on the original video, I had YouTube shorts, and I had about 6 of them playing at the same time, side by side, because a YouTube short is vertical video. It's not 16 by 9, it's 9 by 16, and I can put 3 of them on the screen at the same time. So I would put 3 in place, have them playing simultaneously, and then I would switch each one to a new one and have them playing simultaneously. So it would be like 6 YouTube shorts playing all at the same time. But this time, when I was talking about the highlights, I decided to add each one sequentially. Rather than having all 3 appear at the same time, I would say highlights include going to the beach, and then only the beach video would show up, and 2/3 of the screen would be black. And I would just leave it like that. And then when I said, highlights included going to the beach, having a snack. And when I said having a snack, when I said snack, that's when the snack video appears. So now I've got 2/3 with video, 1/3 is still black, and highlights included climbing to a lookout point. And then I added the lookout point video. So we start with a black screen, and then we add 1/3 of a video at a time, sequentially. And I thought that would be an interesting thing to do, and it was. I liked the overall effect, but it made creating the intro far more complicated. I had to take so many more runs at it because I couldn't get the timing right. And it was really hard to do. And so I spent a long time fine-tuning this introduction because I'd learned these new techniques, and the new techniques allowed me to spend more time on it and shaping it a little bit more. And was it all worth the effort? Again, I don't know. It was fun to do, and I'm glad I do it, and I like the result. But the amount of time that I spent on it was a bit out of whack. It was a long, long time. The only way I could justify spending that much time on it is if the video suddenly got 80,000 views because everybody loved the intro so much. That would make it worth it, but short of that, it's a whole lot of work for very little gain in the end. I did a bunch of other things with the Cape Rachado video that I could talk about, but I'll mention just one of them because it's kind of fun. I decided to put in a couple of movie clips. I love movies, I love TV shows. I have scenes playing in my head all the time from my favorite movies and TV shows. And I've seen YouTubers put them into their videos. They're shooting their travel vlog, and when they mention something, whatever the topic is, just for fun, they'll take a 3-second clip from a famous movie and stick it into their video. And I decided to do that, and I got the idea mainly because when I was walking to Cape Rachado, I was walking down a hot, busy highway, and I started referring to that as trudging. I'm trudging down the highway. And I remember a scene out of a movie, and there's a scene in which the character Geoffrey Chaucer is walking down the road, and he's stopped by Heath Ledger's character, and Heath asks him, "Sir, what are you doing?" Because in that scene, he doesn't have any clothes on, and he's walking barefoot. So it's a very unusual sight to see something like that. And Heath Ledger's character says, "Oi, sir, what are you doing?" And Geoffrey Chaucer turns around and says, "Trudging?" And then he explains what trudging is and why he's trudging. And I love that scene so much, so I took a few seconds, cut it out, and put it into my YouTube video. And that led to me being a little bit worried about copyright. I don't know what the rules are. I do not want to spend 2 hours exporting this video and then spend 14 hours uploading the video and then spend 1 hour doing the description and all the other video titles and thumbnail, do all of that work, and then as soon as I post it, YouTube shuts it down with a copyright strike because I put in that 3-second clip. That would be a disaster because I would have to delete the whole video, recreate the entire video, export the whole video. I said, upload the whole video. It would be a 18-hour job to replace that video with a video that doesn't include that 3-second movie clip. Because as far as I'm aware, in YouTube itself, there's no ability to edit video, really. As soon as you upload a video, there it is. And it's not like I can go into YouTube and delete that movie clip. It can't be done. YouTube doesn't have a built-in video editor. So if I got a copyright strike, I would have to delete the video, recreate it, re-export it, and re-upload it. So I really was kind of worried about it. And then, so what I ended up doing, I was reading on all of the copyright rules about what you can and can't include. And it's not 100% clear. It's always risky if you include any kind of copyrighted material. You're allowed to do it under the fair use doctrine. And under fair use, there are rules about how long it can be, and you have to transform it in some way. You have to be commenting on it. So what I ended up doing, just to be safe, of course I made it very, very short, but then I put some text over top of it, where when he says I'm trudging, I put the word trudging across the screen in big letters, and I just added some text to it to make it look different. I'm just doing my best to avoid a copyright strike. And later on I added a second video clip, which I ended up deleting because I was really worried about copyright. I was talking about going through the jungle of Cape Rachado, and I was talking about all the vines in the jungle and making a commentary about how Tarzan would swing through the jungle on these vines and how in reality that's not possible to do. And that got me thinking about Tarzan movies, and I went looking for a Tarzan clip of Tarzan swinging on a vine, and I wanted to stick that into the video. And for whatever reason, I ended up with a short clip from the Brendan Fraser movie, George of the Jungle, and there was a somewhat amusing moment when George is standing on a high cliff above a raging river, and he's holding on to a very thick vine, and he says something about how he is going to do the most dangerous vine swing in all of history, and it's really a bad idea, but he's going to do it anyway because he has to rescue the damsel in distress. And then at the end he makes a very worried sound, like oh, and then he swings. So I clipped that out and I put it in, but just before I hit export on the video, I realized that this clip had music playing. I didn't notice that, but there was a dramatic musical score playing in the background, and music is very dangerous to put into a YouTube video. I don't even want 1 second of music. So I thought, I didn't notice the music playing. So what I ended up doing, I'd gone to all the trouble of getting this clip, copying and pasting it, and doing this, doing that, putting it in. I still wanted to keep it, so I turned off the audio and I recorded me saying his lines, and I did kind of a goofy cartoon voice. So I said his lines, and I made that sound at the end. Ooh. But then just before I exported the video, I was watching the whole video one last time to make sure there weren't any mistakes that I'd missed. And when I got through that George of the Jungle clip, it seemed too goofy. It would probably be fine to leave it in, but it felt like it was over the top. It was, my cartoon voice in particular bothered me. And I thought, I don't like that. It seemed too dumb, too stupid, and I ended up deleting it completely. So it's not in the video. So that was my adventure with adding movie clips. I love the idea, but it does take a long time to do, and it raises a lot of copyright concerns. Not to go on forever about this topic, but I thought I would include one other idea, and that is when I was making the introduction to my video, it drove home again how weak I am when it comes to making graphics. I don't know how people do it, and I've been struggling with this for a long time. I don't have any programs for making graphics. I don't know how people do it. People make it look so effortless, and I don't know how they do it. I was just watching some other videos. I'll talk about them in my YouTube stories section, but I was watching videos from a new YouTubers that I just discovered, and they do a lot of video editing and use very simple graphics. For example, anytime anybody flies, their YouTube travel video starts with them flying from Bangkok to Kuala Lumpur. They put in a map, and then they show an airplane flying, and they put a little line behind the airplane. And it's the simplest thing imaginable, and I've been seeing that on YouTube for 5 years. I still can't. I don't know how to do that. I don't know how people do that. How do you get a little airplane to go across your Google Maps and put a little line behind it? Something as simple as that, I don't know how they do it. I put in a lot of screenshots of Google Maps, and what I do, which is kind of ridiculous, because in the introduction for the Cape Rachado video, I wanted to put in arrows. And in DaVinci Resolve, my editing program, I don't know how you put in arrows. There's no menu that says insert arrow. It would probably take me 10 years to figure out how to do it in DaVinci Resolve. So the only program I know about where I can stick in an arrow is my old KineMaster editing program on my smartphone. So what I do is when I want to do something like that, put in an arrow, I turn off my laptop, I get out my phone, and I open up Google Maps. I get a screenshot of Google Maps, and I import that map into KineMaster editing program in KineMaster, and then I put in these arrows, and I even know how to animate them in KineMaster. They have a menu for that. So you can stick in an arrow pointing at something. So I say, here is Cape Rachado, and then I put an arrow on the map, and the arrow moves. It points from the words Cape Rachado to the location on Google Maps. So I animate the arrow so it grows and points where I want it to point. I have no idea how to do that on a laptop, but I know how to do it on KineMasters. It's the most basic. It feels like it's something a child would do in kindergarten now, but that's the limit of my skill when it comes to video editing. So I do that in KineMaster. I draw all the arrows. I have the photo playing in the video, but then I have to time it perfectly to match what I'm saying in my original editing program, because I don't have it in my editing program, if you see what I mean, which makes things so complicated. I have to think through the script in my head. When do I want the arrow to start, and when do I want it to reach its destination? And I have to time it right, and I finish it here. I have to export the video as a video, then I have to copy it onto a flash drive, then copy it from the flash drive to my laptop, insert it into the video, play it with my introduction, and then it might be off by half a second. It's like, the arrow stopped too soon, or it started too soon, or started too late, and I have to go back into KineMaster, adjust it, re-export it, copy it, paste it, insert it, play it again, and I have to do that 3 or 4 times before I finally get it right. I just don't know how people do these things. How do they know how to do these things? So another very simple thing I've always wanted to do is put a border around a photograph. If I insert a photo onto a video clip, sometimes it doesn't stand out. The edges aren't clear, and I just want to put a white line around the photo to make it stand out from the background. In KineMaster, I don't know how to do that. There's no menu for put a border around your photo, and yet it seems like it should be the simplest thing in the world to do, but I don't know how to do it. And in the videos from these YouTubers that I mentioned, the new people I'm going to be talking about, they have the most elaborate credit screen at the end. YouTube allows you to make this end credit screen that shows a subscribe button, click on this video button with information about them, and they have this incredibly elaborate thing that they've done. And how do they know how to do that? I don't know how to do that. I've tried. I've gone into YouTube so many times, and I've gone to these end credit screens, and I'm looking around for all the controls. I can't figure any of it out. I don't know how people make these things. I talked about it, Paddy Doyle, in my last behind the scenes video, all the graphics he has on his YouTube channel, his banner photograph, everything is so heavily photoshopped and perfectly created, and I don't know how to do any of those things. How do people learn? Is there a YouTuber academy that everybody is attending that I don't know about? It's a very frustrating thing. I honestly don't know how to do any of these things. I don't know how people learn. So, Itchy Boots is still in Angola. One of the videos that I watched recently, one of her more recent videos, is called Stumbled Across a Mystery in Rural Angola. And the actual story of the video, I don't have a lot to talk about. She seems to be racing through Angola as quickly as possible. They have a very good road, apparently built by the Chinese, she says. And because of the geography and where she wants to go next, she doesn't seem to be heading off into the wilds this time. She decided to just head for the border with Zambia as fast as possible, cross the border. And she isn't doing a lot of exploring in this video and the next one. So I don't have a lot to say about what she was doing and what she was seeing, but what was really interesting to me was camera talk, because I mentioned in my previous behind the scenes video that she got a resupply of gear and spare parts for her motorcycle and for all of her cameras that were breaking down. And to my amazement, she decided to switch from GoPros to Insta360 Ace Pro cameras. Because up until this point, she was using a GoPro on her helmet chin mount and a GoPro on her motorcycle handlebars. And they have been filling with water, I guess. Because of all the rain and everything going on in West Africa, some water got into them and there's steam on the inside, dampness. And she decided to get new cameras, and she ordered Insta360 Ace Pros. And in the previous video, she talked about, hey, I've got new cameras. She didn't talk about them. She didn't even say what they were, because she saves all of her camera talk for her YouTube Academy. Maybe I need to take her academy to learn how to do YouTube videos. But I just zoomed in on the video and I could see that they were Ace Pros. And I was very curious about how she would feel about these cameras. And I predicted it exactly. I was exactly right. Because in this video, she announced she's done with those cameras. She already went back to GoPro, which is so interesting. Her experiment with the Ace Pro lasted 1 day. She mounted the Ace Pros, she used them for 1 day filming, and after that she went to edit the video and she didn't like it and went right back to her GoPro, which is interesting. Though I don't think she went back to both GoPros. She changed her helmet chin mount back to a GoPro, but I think she still has the Ace Pro on her handlebars. And that relates to what she said about why she didn't like them. And I predicted pretty much all of her reasons, because when I talked about her previous, in my previous behind the scenes video, I was talking about her using the Ace Pro. And one thing I talked about was how the Ace Pro is physically designed differently, and the microphone jack sticks out to the side. So you see the adapter, the microphone jack, and the cord sticking way out to the side from the camera. It's very visible in the video. And as soon as I saw that, I didn't like it. In the video, you don't really want to be staring at that microphone the entire time. It's visually distracting, and it seemed to me it would get in the way all the time, where she's taking her helmet off and this thing sticking out, the wire would get caught on things. It just looked like it would be annoying over time, and she said that. So when she said, I'm going back to GoPro, the reasons she gave were this wire sticking out to the side. She didn't like it. And the other thing I noticed, and I commented on in my previous video, is that the audio sounded more muffled in a way, and there was less ambient noise. Because I've noticed that quality in Insta360 microphones and DJI microphones. To me, I don't like the audio quality because they focus on the person's voice more, and they isolate your voice, and they reject more ambient noise. I find that GoPros, particularly combined with a Rode Wireless Go, allow more ambient noise. So you do hear the YouTuber's voice clearly, but you would hear Nora Lee's voice, but you would also hear sound of the motorcycle engine, horns honking, people talking. All the sound around her also gets picked up. And when she started using the Ace Pro, a lot of that vanished for me, and all I heard was her voice, and I didn't find it as pleasing. I want ambient audio, and it sounded like it was being recorded in a studio as a voiceover. It didn't sound like it was being recorded in real time. And that's something I felt about DJI microphones in general for a long time. I don't like the audio that they create. So that was my comment, and then Itchy Boots said exactly the same thing. She stopped using the Ace Pro because she didn't like the microphone sticking out, and she didn't like the audio quality. It didn't sound right to her. She didn't say what she didn't like about it. She just said she didn't like it. So she decided to go back to the GoPro. But I guess she changed to the GoPro on this camera because that's her main camera. That's the main video that she uses, and that's where the audio is being recorded. The other one being on her motorcycle handlebars, there's no audio coming from that, and there's no need to plug in a microphone. So I think she's still using an Ace Pro on her handlebars, but she went back to her GoPro for her helmet chin mounted GoPro, her main GoPro. She went back. Her main camera, she went back to a GoPro. So I thought that was kind of interesting. But one other thing about this video I should mention, this is the one called Stumbled Across a Mystery in Rural Angola, is that it was gorgeous. She happened to be passing over a river and going to a waterfall, I guess at the height of the rainy season in Angola, and the views were spectacular. She flew her drone over the river. There's a bridge there, the raging river, and the water coming over this waterfall was unbelievable. Some of the most beautiful scenery I've seen in her videos for a very long time, or in any video, basically. It was absolutely stunning. And there's a hotel right on the waterfall, on the cliff beside the waterfall, and her hotel room has a window and a balcony overlooking the waterfall. It is an astonishing setting, and that was quite something to see in her video. And if you go through the comments from people, that's mainly what people are talking about, because people are just surprised that Angola is so beautiful. Nobody had any idea that this kind of scenery was in Angola. And I fall into that category as well. I was not expecting to see that kind of beautiful scenery. And as I've often mentioned, I'm not really a waterfall guy. I'm not going to go way out of my way just because there's another waterfall. But if there was a waterfall like that nearby with that kind of water flow, you have to go see it. It would be spectacular. So that was an amazing part of that video. And our next video is basically riding the motorcycle. This one is called Angola Police Can't Believe I Did It. Season 7, episode 86. And she started at the waterfall. That day began at the waterfall. And she rode 650 kilometers along a paved highway and found a hotel to spend the night. And I guess she's near the border with Zambia. And the next video will be her crossing the border into Zambia. But I don't remember anything happening in this video that I feel like I want to talk about. Not really. I think she used like one camera for the entire day. She had a classic going to get gas scene in the video. And I've talked about how when she does things like that, she tends to use the 360 camera. And it's really cool because the 360 camera captures all kinds of candid video of all the activity around her. because when she goes to a gas station, all the men crowd around her and talk to her and want to look at the motorcycle. And she often switches to video from the 360 camera because it's capturing the overall scene in a way that her GoPro is not. But I think in this one, she didn't even bother turning it on. If she did turn it on, she didn't use any of the video. She just had standard video from her GoPro. And while she was going down the highway, I don't have any memory of the camera angle ever changing. It was just always video from her GoPro pointing forward. She probably switched to the Ace Pro looking backward, but I have no memory of that happening. My memory of the video is just one camera angle the entire time, and she just rode her motorcycle, and that was pretty much the whole video, I think. She passed through a town that had a lot of artwork. There were buildings that had large graffiti-style paintings, street art basically, and a lot of the buildings were empty and abandoned. And as she rode through, she commented on that, but that was the one notable event of the day. Beyond that, nothing much happened. The headline news is she lasted one day with her Ace Pro, and I guess her Ace Pro is now tucked away in one of her pannier bags, and she went back to good old GoPro. Yeah, of course, Planet Doug, I love to hear any information like that about why people choose this camera over that camera and their experience with this or that camera. So it was a rare moment in the world of Itchy Boots where she referenced the camera gear, things she liked or disliked about it. Yeah, I appreciated that. The new YouTubers that I mentioned are an American couple, Tony and Sarah. I think they're from Tampa. I don't really know where they're from. I'm guessing Tampa, Florida. And they are now backpacking around Southeast Asia. And the reason they showed up in my YouTube feed is they just arrived in Malaysia. They shot one video about flying from Bangkok to Kuala Lumpur, and then they shot one video about Kuala Lumpur. And the video was called First Time in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. Then brackets, things didn't go as planned. So I watched that video. I watched the flying video from Bangkok to Kuala Lumpur, and then I went back in time just to see how all of this started. And I watched their first video where they were preparing for the trip, and then their first video from Bangkok. So the channel is called the Detour Duo, Tony and Sarah being the duo. And on their channel, it looks like they've been shooting video for 1 year. And for most of that time, they were in the United States, and they were exploring areas around where they lived, I assume, and they were making tourism videos. I haven't watched any of those, so I don't know exactly how they shot those videos, what they're like. But then 4 months ago, they announced that we quit our jobs, sold everything we owned, put everything else into storage. They had a pet cat, I guess, named Otto, and they left their pet cat with someone's sister, some family member. So they basically shot the typical video. We quit our jobs, we sold everything, we gave up our life, and we are going to go backpacking around the world. And that was 4 months ago, and their first destination was Southeast Asia. And since they arrived in Bangkok, they've shot 12 videos over the last 4 months. So that would be one video per week, obviously. And it looks like they landed in Bangkok, spent 7 days in Bangkok, and then they took a train to Chiang Mai. And it looks like they stayed 1 month in Chiang Mai, and then they rented a scooter or motorcycle and they went around they went to Pai, and then they did the Mae Hong Son loop, and then their 60-day total for Thailand expired. I guess they got a 30-day visa and then a 30-day extension. so they had to leave, and he crashed his drone. I'm saying he, which is an interesting thing because I'm watching their videos at the beginning, and their videos are heavily edited. They poured so much work into editing their videos. They're almost hyper edited. And I was starting to wonder, well, who is the camera person? The Detour Duo, which is, I already forgot their names, Tony and Sarah. But who is the camera person? Who is the driving force behind shooting the videos and editing the videos? Whose idea was it? Was it Tony or Sarah? I couldn't figure it out from all the videos. But then in one of their videos, they were packing for their trip, and it was Tony narrating, telling the story, and he said something about, and I put all my camera gear into this bag, and he gave this image, showed all of his cameras, and you can see that he has 3 action cameras. I think 2 of them are GoPros. One of them might be a DJI Action, an older model, I think. And then there's a drone, a Sony a7S III, some kind of MacBook, and solid state drives. He's got the whole package there. And he shows very briefly all of his camera gear and then going into the camera bag. So that got me thinking, Tony is the camera guy. But then later when they're in Bangkok, I noticed that Sarah had the Sony a7S III around her neck. I'm assuming it's an a7S III. I don't really know. It could be another Sony, I'm not sure. But she was taking pictures and things. So maybe they double duty, maybe they both shoot the video. And again, I'm curious, who does all the editing? And I'll talk about the editing a little bit more in a minute. But again, I'm still curious when I see these couples that go around the world doing these things. I often wonder who is the driving force for wanting to do the trip. Could be both of them, but it's often one person has the passion for it and the other person just sort of, yeah, sure, I'll come along. And then when it comes to shooting video and editing video, it's often one of them is the videographer and the editor and not necessarily the other person. And I'm always trying to figure out which one is which. In this case, it could be both of them, I'm not sure. And their videos tend to be quite short, anywhere from 5 minutes to maybe a maximum of 25, but I think most are around 15 minutes. 5 to 20 minutes within that range, and they do a lot of editing of those videos. And from what I've seen so far, they tend to take a whole week of activities and then take that full week and take clips from it and put it into their videos and tell the story of a whole week in one video with a lot of editing. And they do a lot of voiceover narration. So it's sort of like they live the week, film everything, and then they stop and then tell the story of all their activities in voiceover, and then that allows them to keep the videos really short and then inserting a lot of clips, live clips that were shot at the time. And they do a lot of those graphics that I talked about, the little airplanes, and then when they have a Google Maps video or Google Maps screenshot of where they traveled, they can put a line in the road. We traveled along this road, and while they're talking about where they're going, you see a line forming on the map. I'm so dumb. I don't even know how to do that. The other day, I came up with this idea that I wanted to do Google Earth, because on Google Earth, you can zoom in. So rather than just having a static shot of Port Dickson, on Google Earth you can start with the entire planet, and then when you do a search for Port Dickson, there will be an animated video on Google Earth and zooms around the planet and then zooms in on Port Dickson. And I wanted to record that and put it in as a clip if I talk about like where is Cape Rachado, instead of just having a Google Maps screenshot with my goofy arrow pointing at it, I wanted to have this fancy Google Earth zoom in animation, and I couldn't do it. I think, to be honest, I think it was my laptop that wouldn't allow me to do it, because I couldn't figure out how to record the animation from Google Earth. So all I could do was record a screenshot, like screen capture of my computer's screen while the animation was playing, but that was too much for my computer's processor. It couldn't handle it, and the whole thing would just freeze up, and my whole computer froze, and I had to basically reboot the computer to get it unstuck. Every time I tried to do that, the laptop just froze. So that was a dead end, and I couldn't figure out how to record it from inside Google Earth. I've seen people do it. I see them do it on videos where they zoom in on Google Earth, and I really like it, but I haven't been able to figure out how to do it. I can't even figure out how to put a little arrow going around a road, or a little line showing where you went. So yeah, I need to learn these things. So yeah, when it comes to the Detour Duo, I'm not really thinking about their travel experiences. I'm going to watch the rest of their videos. They're not a big time commitment, 15 minutes long each. And since I did the Mae Hong Son loop on a scooter, I want to see their experience of that loop. But mainly what I'm looking at is their editing, their filming and editing process, their techniques. I'm curious about that because they're so good at it. They're so professional, and they put so much work into it. And for me, it does beg the question of, is it worthwhile to put in so much work? Because after I watched the video, I did have this unusual feeling that the video itself was not really about Thailand at all. I remember watching their Bangkok video and we're going to Thailand video, and then when I was finished with the video, I stopped for a minute and I compared it to my own experiences when I went to Thailand for the very first time. I remember those things very clearly, and in their video they talk about that they're going to Thailand for the very first time. They're going to Bangkok for the first time, and they're so excited. And when you read about them, their about page, it's all about how they love to learn about new places and go exploring. It's the cookie cutter, it's the cookie cutter YouTube paragraph that everybody writes. I love to explore the world and learn new things. Come with me as I journey around the world. We all succumb to that, and we all write that same paragraph. We can't help it. But then when you read that, and then you watch the video, and at the end of the video, I was thinking, was there even one person from Thailand in that video? Because the entire video was about them and having a vacation, basically, going on a tour. And I kept thinking, was there even one person from Thailand in that video? And they were probably there in the background, but it just didn't jump out at me. But I remember the first time I went to Thailand. It was a long time ago, and I really hadn't been anywhere. And I'm going to Thailand, and I was honestly excited about all these things that we put in our blurbs. I was reading about the history of Thailand, the language of Thailand, the music, the art, the drama, the money, the food. It was a brand new place that I knew nothing about. And if I were writing about that experience, that's what I would be writing about. Again, things about Thailand. But in a Detour Duo video, and YouTube videos in general, I think, you often end up forgetting that they're even in Thailand, because the video is much more from a YouTuber experience. It's almost like the context for the video is not Thailand. The context is YouTube. And they've probably watched lots of other YouTube travel vlogs. So they talk about going through the airports, and you have to get transportation into the city, the taxi, here's the hotel, room tour of your hotel, how much did it cost, getting some food. And at the end of watching the video, it's almost like what country they were in was irrelevant, because nothing was ever mentioned about the country itself. I don't know if I'm making any sense here. And again, I want to make it clear, I don't mean this as a criticism. I'm just thinking of it from my own perspective as someone who occasionally tries to make a YouTube video about being other countries and what's good and what's bad to do for a video for YouTube. I look at these videos from that point of view, and I just find it sort of interesting to look at it from that perspective. And of course, it could be that their actual life is totally different from the video, because they lived an entire week of activities. They can't put all of that in the video. They just chose highlights that they thought would be interesting for a YouTube audience. They wanted to make a video that people would enjoy watching. It's not necessarily a video that shows their actual life, if you see what I mean. For all I know, off camera, they were immersed in learning about the history of Thailand and the music of Thailand and the Thai language, on and on and on. But none of that stuff is in the video, because they knew if they made a video about that stuff, nobody would watch it. This is the kind of video that people will want to watch. They want to see someone having fun and going on an adventure, and they want to live that experience vicariously. They don't want to sit through a grade 8 geography and history course about Thailand. Makes sense. But it is something I noticed, and the feeling continued when they went to Kuala Lumpur, and the fact that they were changing countries is almost irrelevant again, because the country itself was not the context. The context was the video and YouTube. So they had all these experiences when they got to Kuala Lumpur. They referenced local places, of course, the Petronas Towers, and they went to the Eco Park, what everybody does, and walked along the Canopy Walkway, and they went to Batu Caves, and they went to the Sri Mariamman Temple in Chinatown, and they went to there's an alleyway nearby there that has all kinds of interactive street art. I've been to all these places, so I know exactly what they were doing and where they were going. And yet somehow the fact that they were in Malaysia didn't really seem to be important. Nothing was ever mentioned about Malaysia in particular. If you watch that video and gave a 5th grader a quiz about Malaysia, they would fail miserably, because they don't know who lives in Malaysia, how many people live there, where it is, the geography of the place, what languages they speak, were they a colony of a European power at some time, when did they achieve. There was no information about Malaysia in the video at all, so the country was somewhat irrelevant. And when it comes to these first time in KL videos, I often apply what I call the Batu Caves test. And they did go to Batu Caves, and I have to say that they failed the Planet Doug Batu Caves test, because they went there, but in order to pass the Batu Caves test, they have to know that it is a Hindu temple. I don't think that came up at all. I don't think it was mentioned. They focused on the steps, the cave, and the monkeys, as they called them, but I don't think it was ever mentioned that it was a Hindu temple, or that it was connected with the Tamil people of India, and they didn't mention that it was dedicated to Lord Murugan. In fact, I don't think they even showed the statue, Though one of the main features of Batu Caves, of course, is the giant golden statue of Lord Murugan, and it is, I forget the fact now, the tallest in the world, certainly one of the tallest in the world. And in order to pass the Batu Caves test, the YouTuber has to know that the statue is of Lord Murugan and who Lord Murugan is and why that's important to the Tamil people. But the Detour Duo failed that miserably, but I don't think they even showed the statue. I'm trying to remember. In most videos, they at least have a little clip where they zoom in on the statue, but I don't think they even did that. And to pass the test, they also have to know that the monkeys are macaques, but that was never mentioned, so they failed that as well. And to get an A+ in the Batu Caves test, they have to go there by local transportation. They have to take the train from KL Central, take the KTM train to Batu Caves and navigate that whole system rather than just taking a grab to get there. And they didn't do that either, so they failed the Batu Caves test terribly. Thought that was kind of funny. Anyway, I am going to watch the rest of their videos and maybe I'll have more to talk about, but I definitely admire the editing, the amount of work that goes into the editing. Wow. I would love to hear from them how they know how to do all this stuff, how they do it, and how much time they spend on it. Yeah, very professionally done. And their videos are quite popular. They not on Itchy Boots level or Bald and Bankrupt level, but maybe at the Paddy Doyle level of popularity in terms of the number of views. They're very upbeat, exciting people having a lot of fun. Their videos are short and entertaining. They play a lot of music, very fast-paced, with a lot of different places included in each video. And all of that is designed to make them fun to watch and popular on YouTube. So yeah, I'm looking forward to watching the rest of them, the Pi videos and the Mei Hong Son loop videos, see what they get up to there. Bald and Bankrupt posted another video. I don't have a lot to say about it, but I'll mention it in passing. The video is called "I Caught a Pickpocket in Athens." So he's in Athens, he's in Greece, and he's hanging out with one of his YouTuber sidekicks. What's the guy's name? Timmy Carter, maybe? I get his sidekicks mixed up, actually. But anyway, he's with the YouTuber that went with him through the Darien Gap. So he's with him, and this other YouTuber is from Greece. It's his home country, and is sort of acting as Bald and Bankrupt's guide for exploring Athens. And of course, that didn't really work out very well. But for me, the interesting thing in the video that jumped out at me is that they had a cameraman. So this time, Bald was not holding on to his Sony X3000. They actually had a third person, someone from Athens, someone from Greece. I assume it was a friend of his sidekick, Timmy Carter, and they don't say what they did. They didn't say they hired him and paid him this much money. They don't really talk about it, but they had someone following them around with a camera taking video. So they weren't shooting video themselves. And that led to a dramatic change in the video. For my money, it didn't improve it because you got so many shots of them from behind, because you've got Bald and Bankrupt and his sidekick walking down the street talking about whatever they're looking at in Athens, but the cameraman is behind them with the camera and sort of filming them from behind the entire time. So you get all these shots of the backs of these two guys. And then occasionally, of course, if they're standing around talking, he'll move around to the front and film them from the front. But it had a very different feeling from a normal Bald and Bankrupt video where he's filming himself with the X3000 and then filming himself and filming other people. Had a very personal first-person quality to it, and having a cameraman changed the mood. Maybe he does that all the time and I just haven't seen those videos because I've watched his Darien Gap videos, but I haven't been following his YouTube channel, so maybe he does this all the time and I just haven't watched those videos. But I think it's the first time I've seen him use a cameraman, and I noticed how that changed the quality of the video dramatically. And then they had the moment where, according to the video title, they caught a pickpocket, but the actual event was not nearly as exciting as it sounds. From the title, of course, it sounds like they had their pockets picked and then they ran after the thief and tackled him to the ground and got him arrested. But nothing like that happened. It was actually difficult for me to even figure out what happened. Did the guy actually take something or not? But it seemed like the cameraman felt like someone came up behind him and tried to pick his pocket, like bumped into him and then tried to take his smartphone. And I think that's what happened. And then the cameraman aimed the camera at this guy. There were two men actually that they say were working as partners, like pickpocketing team. And then he's, oh, this guy, he just tried to pick my pocket. And then Bald and Bankrupt and his sidekick and the cameraman were all having this animated discussion. He just tried to steal my smartphone. Then the guy that they were accusing shouted at them and got in their face. What are you saying? What are you? And I didn't really understand what had happened, but that was the overall scene. And, but yeah, that's about it. That's all I wanted to say. I think I bring things like this up all the time because there is this idea in the world of photography and videography that cameras don't matter. People will say that all the time. They trot it out as a truism, that it's not the camera, it's the photographer. It doesn't matter what camera you use. It's all about the person using the camera. And for my money, like most truisms, it's utter nonsense. The camera, the gear, the filming technique has a dramatic effect on the video in the end. How can it be otherwise? And in this case, changing from you holding the camera to having a third person as a cameraman has a dramatic effect on how the video looks. So, yeah, it goes against this idea that the camera, and it doesn't matter, but the camera really does matter. And if you have a cameraman, it actually changes how the video looks. So I found that kind of interesting. Pop Culture Roundup. I'm still watching Constellation, and when I mentioned that show for the first time, I wasn't very happy with it. I was excited about the topic, science fiction. It looked like something that I'd find very interesting, but then I found the storytelling a bit frustrating because of this whole unreliable narrator idea that I talked about, where this woman, the astronaut, who's the central character, was in space. There was an accident involving quantum physics, and they're just hinting at it throughout the first episodes, not making it entirely clear, but there was this idea that this experiment created a problem in space-time. Could be alternate timelines, could be the multiverse, could be traveling through time. Something weird is going on. And I would really enjoy that. And this is going to be a spoiler, a big spoiler, if you haven't watched the show. So again, here's my spoiler alert. If you don't want to know anything about the show, jump ahead now, because I'm going to talk about plot details. So as far as I can make out, what really happened in the show is that when they conducted this quantum physics experiment, people switched places. So there's actually two different worlds where this character is living two different lives. And because of this experiment, they switched places. So in fact, this woman went from one timeline into an entirely different timeline, and that's basically what's going on. And for me, I would find that very interesting if they just came out with it. It's so obvious what's going on, but they're playing it in this moody, mystical, dreamlike way where people keep popping up in weird places where they're not supposed to be. Things are changing. Where, for example, this astronaut finally gets back to Earth and she goes to her house and their car is blue instead of red. And this surprises her because she knows their car was red. Like, when did we get a blue car? And now there's a piano in the living room. Like, when did we get a piano? So it's 100% obvious she's in a different timeline. She's switched places with her other self. And the woman who lived in this timeline is now living in her timeline. And it gets more complicated because in one of the timelines, she and her husband were about to get a divorce. They were estranged and they were fighting all the time. Their relationship had failed, but in this timeline, they were perfectly happy in their marriage. So from the husband's point of view, when his wife went out into space, she hated him and they were fighting and arguing and getting a divorce. She comes back from space and she's in love with him and is happy and their marriage is fine. And he's wondering, what the heck? What happened? And he's confused. And I think in one of the timelines, she was having an affair. She had a boyfriend, but because they switched places, now this woman, this man, her boyfriend, keeps coming up to her to kiss her and hug her and, oh, I'm so happy. And she's like, hey, buddy, what are you doing? What are you doing? Who are you? Why are you acting this way? And so, of course, her boyfriend has got to be super confused. Like, what do you mean? You're my girlfriend. And yet it's a different version of this woman. So she's living in a brand new timeline. And they could have a lot of fun with that, but they're playing it coy. Like, none of us have figured this out yet. And everything is just being dragged out and dragged out and dragged out. And it's no fun. I want the show to be fun. So, yeah, anyway, I'm not really enjoying it for some reason. I should. It's a kind of topic I would normally enjoy immensely. But I sort of want the character to be more proactive and just come out and say, huh, this is weird. And I want all these things to come out in the open. Talk to her husband and say, when did we get a piano? No, like when I went up to the space shuttle, when I went up to the space station, we didn't have a piano. When did you get a piano? And he would say, we've always had a piano. And she would say, when did we get a blue car? And he would say, we've always had a blue car. Have you lost your mind? And I want them to talk about this, and I want them to figure out, oh, I'm in a new timeline. Because I figured it out, everybody's figured it out, but somehow the characters are taking forever to figure it out. And I'm just finding it a bit of a slog, a bit of a trudge. We'll see. Maybe it will get better. But I'm not enjoying the tone of the show. It's just too moody. It's too dour. I want it to be happier, more upbeat, have fun with the concept. And let's get to the point where people know what's going on. Because I already know, everybody knows. So anyway, that's Constellation. There's a brand new episode, episode 4, I haven't watched yet. So hopefully in episode 4, things start to happen. Did I just say, Maybe I did. I'm also watching the new season of Resident Alien. I love that show. In all the ways that I'm finding Constellation to be too slow and too dour, Resident Alien is the exact opposite. We're dealing with time travel and aliens and craziness, and they're just having fun with it. Just having lots and lots of fun. Characters are great. It's entertaining. They do have human stories. There is the central story of the alien living on Earth. The fate of the world is always at stake. There's a lot of humor, but there are also, all the characters have their own drama going on that is separate from the alien story. Normally I might find that distracting if there's too much drama, but they're giving just enough to make it interesting but not get in the way, so that every character is fully fleshed out, leading their own lives, having their own dramas, while the alien story. So there's A story, which is the alien story, but then there's a bunch of B stories, and it's just fun and entertaining. In fact, I watched all of season 2 again, just so I could be up to speed with season 3. Season 3 is the new season, and I found that when I started watching the first episode, I was a bit lost. I didn't really understand everything, so I decided just to rewatch maybe one episode, the finale of season 2, so I could ease into season 3. But when I started watching the finale, I found it so much fun and so entertaining, I just went all the way back to episode 1, and I watched the entire second season of Resident Alien. And it was just as enjoyable. It's probably my third time watching it. And I had just as much fun watching it all over again. And I got all up to speed, and now I know everything that's going on. And now I'm enjoying season 3 very much. So, yeah. Resident Alien, a lot of fun. Alan Tudyk is the star. He's playing the alien. And oddly enough, Alan Tudyk is in the movie. I mentioned I put in the movie clip of Chaucer trudging along, and Alan Tudyk's character is a big part of that scene, dealing with Chaucer as he's trudging down the road. So yeah. Anyway, good show. I'm enjoying it a lot. And I will end today's behind the scenes with a discussion from a podcast, which I found quite interesting. This podcast is from Freakonomics Radio, and it's their most recent podcast called Is Google Getting Worse? It was released on February 22nd. And in fact, I'd heard this episode before, and I enjoyed it very much, called Is Google Getting Worse? Because they played it weeks or months ago, so they're replaying it now with an update. And overall, the podcast is about search engines, and they're asking the question of, is Google becoming less satisfactory as a search engine, and is Google going to be replaced by a new type of search engine based on AIs? And I talked about this in the past. And it's a very interesting idea, because I think we're so accustomed to Google that we forget how it works. And they go into the history a little bit. And the genius behind Google, the realization, the trick that led to this behemoth that controls our lives, the original idea was so simple that it seems amazing, and we've kind of forgotten about how it works. And basically what Google does is rank websites. So if you do a search for anything on the internet, Google gives you a list of websites with information about that topic, or not really websites, but web pages that contain that information. But the trick is they figured out that they can rank those web pages, and they rank them based on how many links lead into it and out of it. So it's a bit of an artificial way of making a judgment call, but they're basically giving you a list of web pages from the most important to the least important, and they're basing their judgment on how many links does that page have. The more links it has, the more accurate it probably is, the more useful it probably is, the more authoritative it probably is. So when you do a search, they show you a result that has the highest number of links that lead to other web pages on the internet. And that is how Google works, basically. And from a human interaction point of view, from a UI point of view, it's interesting to think that when you ask Google a question, it doesn't give you the answer. We think of Google giving us answers, but that's not its primary function. Its primary function is to give us a list of web pages that may or may not contain the answer. So you type in Port Dickson into Google, you'll get a bunch of websites that contain information about Port Dickson, and then you have to scan that list and decide which one to click on, open up that web page, and it may or may not contain the information about Port Dickson you're looking for. So Google doesn't really give you the answer. It just gives you a list of places on the internet that might have the answer. And that's very important because the way AI works, the way ChatGPT works, you can call these answer bots because you can ask them a question and they give you the answer. They don't give you a list of websites that may or may not contain the answer. They give you the answer, or what they think is the answer. So I find that absolutely fascinating. So from a point of view of being competitors for Google, I think they are really strong competitors. I use AI answer bots, or are they answer bots? Is that what they're called? Actually, I'm not sure. I don't know if the term answer bot is commonly used to refer to all of them. ChatGPT, they call it a chat bot, but I don't use it for chatting, obviously. I use it as an answer bot. I ask it questions, it gives me answer. But in this Freakonomics episode, they introduced me to a new one, which is quite interesting, called Perplexity. So Perplexity is a brand new AI-powered answer bot, and they are positioning themselves as a direct competitor to Google, a direct alternative to Google, and perhaps a better one. And I found that quite interesting. I've been using Perplexity now for a few days, and they have a app, so you can download the Perplexity app. I have it on my phone now, and whenever I think about something on Google, I think, oh, I'm going to do a Google search. I stop. Oh, let's ask Perplexity. I have the app open, and I just ask Perplexity. And Perplexity is kind of special. Perhaps it's distinct from ChatGPT because it really is designed to give you an answer. It is an answer bot, and according to the founders, it's better than ChatGPT. We've been hearing some stories about ChatGPT and other AIs kind of freaking out, losing their mind, and giving really crazy, inaccurate answers lately. And the founders, creators of Perplexity, they're arguing that Perplexity is better. It is more accurate. It will not give you crazy answers. They say it's better, and it really is dedicated to being a specific answer bot. And it gives you the answer, and then it gives you the web pages where it got the answers. So you get kind of the best of both worlds. You can just ask it your question. What are the best tourist attractions in Port Dickson? Boop, and you get, oh, the best tourist attractions in Port Dickson are, and it lists all of the major tourist attractions, and then at the bottom it gives you a list of the web pages that it thinks are the most authoritative, the best sources where they got the information to find their answer. So I find that very interesting. So yeah, I'm having fun with Perplexity now. And I think Perplexity also says it's different because they are more honest about how they use personal information. I don't know whether any of this is true, but in the interview, the guy, the CEO of Perplexity, he says that in something like ChatGPT, you can tell it not to store your history. Like all of your searches on ChatGPT, you have the option to turn off the feature where they use your personal data to make money. You can say, no, you can't do that. But if you turn that off, you no longer have access to your history on ChatGPT. They kind of punish you for that by taking away features. But he says on Perplexity, they don't do that. You decide what happens. We give you the service, and then you can turn off the feature that we store or we use any information. If you don't want us to, turn it off. Doesn't matter. Turn it on, turn it off. You have complete control over how that works. And there's also a paid service. So I think in the future, the idea is that they want people to subscribe to Perplexity, and you pay a certain amount per month or per year and different levels of power, I guess. But they also offer a free version, and I guess the paid versions are better in some ways, but I don't know how they're better, to be honest. I'm just using the free version. But they're assuming that in the future it will be worth it to people to pay for it when they realize how much better it is and how much it helps them in their daily lives. So that is a podcast story all about Perplexity. Yeah, I find that really, really interesting. Pet peeve time, and this morning my pet peeves, as they often are related to YouTube and to the internet in general. Yeah, I don't know if I've talked about this in the past. I feel like I talked about it a little bit. Forgive me if I'm repeating myself, but YouTube Studio is the program, the app, where someone who's a content creator, a YouTuber, you're supposed to be able to go to YouTube Studio to do all of your stuff, to manage your account, all these things. And I talked in the past about how for many, many, many years, it was kind of ridiculous because the one thing you couldn't do in YouTube Studio is upload videos, which by far is the most important thing you need to do as a content creator. And yet it was the one thing that their content creator app couldn't do. They fixed that. Now you can upload videos from the app, so that's good. But what I often want to use the Studio app to do is to reply to comments. And it has so many problems there. One of the problems, I think I did talk about this before, is that when you reply to a comment or a reply inside a comment, your reply does not link back to the person you're talking to. So it's like you write something as a reply to what someone said, but then what you wrote is just sitting there in the middle of nowhere, and it's not clear who you're talking to because it does not include a reference to whatever it is you were talking about. Someone says something in a comment thread and there's their YouTube username. I reply to that person. I want their YouTuber name to be in my reply because I'm speaking to that person. And yet that doesn't happen. And that is a pet peeve of mine. It is very annoying. But an even larger pet peeve is that if you are using YouTube Studio on your phone and you're replying to comments, every time you do that, the comment reply window covers up the comment that you're replying to. So I see what someone wrote and I want to reply to what they wrote, and I click on reply and the window pops open, but now I can't see what I'm replying to anymore. I want to refer back. I'm typing away and I know they said 3 different things, and I want to reply to each point one by one, but now I can't see their comment anymore because my reply window, my typing window, is covering up their comment. And I find that so annoying. It is such a user interface failure. It drives me crazy. So what I have to do is close my comment. Now I can see their comment all over again. I can read through it. Oh, that's what they said. And then I have to reopen my comment and reply to them. But then I can't see their comment anymore because it's being covered up. It's just absolutely ridiculous. And I get annoyed with these things because I'm bombarded with YouTube features. I get all these comments, not comments, they're announcements from YouTube. We just gave you this feature, we just gave you this feature, we gave you this feature. And none of the features they tell me about are of any use to me. And I keep saying mentally to them, you want to make me happy, fix this. I don't need all this stuff you've got teams of people building. Just look at what's here now and make what is already there better, so that when I reply to a comment, my comment reply window doesn't cover up the comment I'm replying to. That seems like such a kindergarten level no-brainer. It drives me crazy. So what I end up doing, which is so ridiculous, I'm replying to comments on this phone, and I have phone number 2 open to the original comment. So now as I'm replying to the comment, I can read the original comment over here, and I have to have 2 phones open at the same time, which is absolutely ridiculous. So that is my big pet peeve for today. And that is it. I am shutting down. I'm going to make another cup of coffee, and I'm going to be editing another video today. I have one other video that I shot here in Port Dickson. I went to the Marine Center. They call it the Port Dickson Ornamental Fish Center. It's a bit of a weird name. I think of it as the Marine Center, or Aquarium would be better. The Port Dickson Aquarium would be a nice name. Ornamental Fish Center. Sounds like someplace you would go to buy fish for your fish tank at home. Like a place for hobbyists to go get stuff for their tropical fish tank. But anyway, it's called the Port Dickson Ornamental Fish Center. And I went there one day and I shot a video there, and I have to edit that video. And that will be my last Port Dickson experience that I've already filmed. I may have new Port Dickson experiences, but probably not. I think I just have to finish editing that video, and then I'm done with my time here. I just needed to get caught up on Sumatra videos, and then caught up on Port Dickson videos, and then I can move on to some other part of my life. We'll see how long it takes for me to edit this video. I don't know whether I'll do a fancy introduction to it. I may or may not. We'll see how that goes. All right. That's it for this morning. Thanks for keeping me company on Planet Doug, and I'll see you in the next video.